What if thought leaders from around the university came together to discuss state-of-the-art remedies to 21st century challenges? Florida Atlantic University's faculty are pioneering education through cutting-edge solutions such as artificial intelligence, authentic assessment, and active learning. Join us as our faculty forge new paths to the future of higher education. From the Center for Online and Continuing Education, this is Faculty Lounge Live.
Good afternoon and welcome to Faculty Lounge Live. Today I'm joined by Jennie Soberon, the Senior Associate Director of Undergraduate Research and Inquiry, and Jessica Young, a Graduate Research Assistant. Together they have developed an AI policy for the Office of Undergraduate Research, and we're really excited to speak about that today. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
So we could just start off with talking a little bit about your titles and what you do in the undergraduate office of research.
Well, I'm a graduate research assistant, so I do a lot of outreach. So a significant portion of what I do is meeting one-on-one with students, developing workshops, hosting workshops. I do some work on our webpage as well, maintaining different pages that detail our programs, and working on the AI policy.
Nice. Jennie?
So I oversee a bunch of different programs within the office and different, with some of our students and working with our grad students and our student workers. Also any presentations, that type of thing that we do out for outreach, that kind of thing. We work with our faculty liaisons, our faculty mentors. We have an undergraduate research certificate.
Yes,
program.
nice.
There's a lot of things going on in our office that we oversee.
Awesome. That sounds really great. So maybe we could start with speaking about why it was important to create the AI policy and some background or story on how it got started.
Okay, I'll take that one.
Yeah.
The Office of Undergraduate Research and Inquiry, or OURI, is how we are known to most people. We do have a lot of acronyms.
Yeah, I was saying OURI. Yeah.
Yes. We usually say OURI.
Okay, OURI.
Anyway, so it kind of came into play March of 2023. We were trying to figure out what to do for our symposium, which we host every spring, which was in April that year, for the keynote panel. The symposium is where undergraduate students come and present on their research, either in a poster presentation or oral presentation. And we always try to do something relevant for the lunch keynote panel.
Yes.
And ChatGPT had just come onto the playing field, I guess.
Yep.
And we decided we were going to host a panel on that. And we had a faculty member come in who gave us an overview of what ChatGPT is, what it could do. We had faculty on the panel. We had undergraduate students on the panel. We had graduate students on the panel. Wow. And the interesting thing is at the time, the graduate student that was in our office had said, "Oh, have you guys seen that South Park episode?" And I had to write it down, so I remember. Yeah. Supposedly, South Park used ChatGPT in their deep learning episode, which aired on March 8th of 2023. And it tells a story about how Clyde, I don't know the characters, so I watched that often. How Clyde uses ChatGPT to take his text messaging to his girlfriend to the next level. And so we all watched it in the office. It was hilarious. It's not a very long piece, but so that kind of paved the way for us to get, have it out there for everybody to see.
Right.
And then February of this year, it came up again as one of our applications was flagged as being created through AI.
Okay.
And we had to figure out how we were going to address that situation. And then we knew we needed to create some kind of policy going forward for our submitters, our applicants, but also for our reviewers who are reviewing, because that's important. So we drafted a policy for both. Our office has faculty liaisons, which are a faculty member from each college in the university. And we meet with them regularly, like once a month, and we took the policy to them for them to review and give us feedback. And then they voted on it, told us what we needed to change and what we needed to figure out and fix. And so we ended up with creating two policies. One is for the submitter who submits an application, and they have to complete some questions. So we've added extra questions now to all of our program applications.
Okay.
And they need to tell us if they used any type of AI, and if so, what kind. There's a bunch of different selections and how much. And then we ask that they cite it. So they're not going to be, it's not going to go against them if they decide to use AI. They just need to use it appropriately and make sure they're citing it. And then for the reviewers, we ask them to go on and review the policy and know that they've reviewed it, select that they've reviewed it. Because we can't have the reviewers taking pieces of our application and putting them through, turn it in.
Right.
Because that is, open access. So if they want to check on something and see if it's AI, then we ask them to use it through FAU's Copilot, which requires them to log in with their net ID. And that kind of keeps it a little bit more secure.
So it's mainly about the students disclosing if they've used it or not,
Right.
not to reprimand them or keep them
Yes.
from using it.
Correct. For our purposes, yes.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Can you describe a little bit of the process of what it took to get the AI policy developed, maybe who was involved? and
Well,
things
I'll
like
talk a little
that?
bit about that too. So when this happened to us in February, we got online. Dr. Chamley in our office was real helpful because NSF, the National Science Foundation, and NIH had a few things already out there. So we pulled from them. We got help from our dean, Dean Miroff, some others from our faculty liaisons, which I was saying, and creating the policy. And once we had what we thought was a good policy, that's when we asked our faculty to weigh in on it and give us the feedback. So it was everybody in the office. It wasn't just us. It was a team effort. Team effort.
So was it faculty from different colleges
Yes.
or?
Yes, we
Okay.
have our liaisons again, our faculty from each college. We have one faculty member from each college. So College of Medicine, Honors College, education, science, all of them.
So Jessica, could you describe what your input was, where you came in the process?
Yeah, so I came in after the liaisons had already had this rigorous discussion and had done the revisions and the feedback. And so part of what I was doing then was telegraphing the policy to everybody. I actually generated the questions and the cover sheets for the different applications regarding the AI policy and the use of AI within the submissions, or, in the case of the reviewers, just the acknowledgement that they've looked over the policies. Figuring out kind of the best ways to word that, the most concise ways to get the point across without, sounding too restrictive about what we were
Yes.
trying to get at there.
Yeah.
So doing that, and then also creating the actual web page where all this is maintained and stored as well, and then linking that as well to what's going on with AI at FAU, the page that's run through the Dean of Undergraduate Studies, Dean Miroff, and his resources on it. So giving people access to the tools for the proper citations, for the different tools that they might want to use or investigate for when they're, working on figuring out if AI fits into their projects.
That sounds great. So I noticed the policy recognizes the value of AI, but also wants to keep creativity, not limiting the students. Would you say that students are more so disclosing their use of AI through citations or in using things like that?
I think people are open about when they do use it.
Okay.
And I think also most students, that we're working with on research projects do have a curiosity about what they're investigating, what they're interested in. And so they don't want AI to lead them all the way there. Right. That kind of defeats the purpose. But certainly I think it is difficult to articulate the ways in which AI is used in terms of the citations and things as well, just because I know the Modern Language Association and the American Psychological Association have, kind of stopgap formats for that, but their most recent editions of their manuals were published before ChatGPT's public release happened. Yeah, and so it's, I think, difficult for students sometimes to find that information or to, be very assured, like, okay, if I cite it like this is the appropriate way to do it. But most of them are really straightforward about, like, yes, I used it when I was brainstorming, or, I couldn't find sources on this particular area of it, and so I, used ChatGPT to try and find the most important papers on that.
It's really our first application that has opened now since we've
Yeah.
implemented this is going to be the grants.
It's going to be the grant, so we
Ah,
expect
okay.
We'll know here in a month or two
Yeah.
how it
it's-
goes.
what's working. We
Yeah.
have to revisit or update it or
Yeah.
make changes that after.
Awesome.
But I imagine it's
Yeah.
not going to hurt them, so they
No.
can admit if they used it.
Right. Yes. I think maybe them knowing that they're allowed to, but just with
Yeah.
showing their work or showing how they used
Citing.
it,
Yeah.
citing, I think that'll ease their mind a little bit.
And I
That's
think
the hope.
we're just as curious too to understand how they're using the tools as well,
That's
which is
true.
why we were
Right.
so interested in breaking it down, not just by what tools they're using, but also, where do they use it in their proposals and in their grants and things as well, just to understand the ways that they're trying to be creative about this too.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Could you explain what the review process was like for the policy and why it was needed?
Do you want that one?
If you want.
You can jump in. Well, the review policy, I think I've kind of already said it, but it was developed. Well, I guess Jessica developed all the questions, and then it was
Nice.
reviewed by everybody in the office, in the team, and we have students also that were reviewing it as well, so we could get the student perspective.
Ah, okay.
And then we went to the faculty liaisons for
Right.
their final input and the adoption of the policy for our office.
Nice. So do you feel like the students were like they had a good perspective or they gave you guys a good insight on how other students might be thinking or
I think so.
Yeah.
And our students are very keen people that we reach out to, our undergraduates, but certainly just, where things were, too wordy or too confusing, or they're like, I feel like I'm, having to say things over and over again about what I was doing here.
okay.
So just trying to make it, as concise and not as cumbersome as it could be, and
Right.
give them the opportunity to explain a little bit about what they were using, AI tools for without, trying to pick it apart in this really detailed way.
Right.
I think it's three
It's three
Three
questions.
additional
Yeah.
questions. on the
Okay.
app side.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
And then for the reviewers,
It's just an acknowledgement.
yeah, that they've
Okay.
read not only their reviewer policy, but also then the submitter policy, just to have the awareness that students can use these tools.
Got it. And was there any pushback from any of the colleges or anything with the reviewer side?
Well, not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
But we will.
Well,
right?
that's good.
But I mean,
Well, that's
since
good.
that's why we reached out to our faculty liaisons.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they all seem to be on board with
Supportive.
it. So
Okay.
hopefully the rest of the faculty will be as well when we ask them to review.
That's good to hear. Let's see. Could you maybe explain some of the steps that were needed to create it more so from like the inception part of it? Maybe did you have to reach out to, I know you said Dean Mirnoff, but did you have to reach out to other places that have already had an AI policy or things like that?
No, I think that was one of the things we had difficulty
Yeah,
with because
it's finding the other people who-
Yeah.
other than a few things written on the NSF website
Yeah,
and
the-
NIH website.
Even the NSF and the NIH websites, those are their processes for merit review, which is essentially what the review process is. That's their grant reviews and things like that as well. So understanding kind of then for the submitters what we want, to prompt and to maybe not encourage for students as well. That was kind of coming up with it based off, what we saw the prospective uses of it and, what are the ethical questions that we're going to have to address going forward. And how do we also encourage students
Creative.
to be creative and to
Yeah.
not be, shying away from these tools because they will become, I think, integrated into, so much of the workforce in the future. It would be a shame to discourage them from
Right.
having
Still need
capabilities
to
with those tools.
Of
be able
course.
to be exposed to them and use them appropriately.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know when I work with faculty, they have a lot of questions about, do you think it would even be useful for them to use it? What would you say to someone who would who would ask that question.
I think that faculty, it depends.
Mhm,
It
yeah.
depends on the course.
Mhm,
And faculty have a choice, I believe,
mhm,
Yeah.
to
yeah.
what
To what level?
level they want to include it in
Mhm.
their course.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
it's really dependent on them. I mean,
Right.
it's up to them, their opinion,
I
What
think
they're
for
comfortable
right?
with.
What they're
Yeah.
comfortable
real world applications, so there's a lot of really interesting stuff that you can do with generative AI, and in particular with trying to really consume and work through really large amounts of data that you just, as a
Mhm.
human, could not have the capacity to do.
Right.
So I know like the US Patent and Trademark Office they have this thing called a prior art search you have to do before you submit a patent application, which says I've looked at every other patent that's in existence to make sure that there's not another one out there that's patenting the idea that I want to submit.
Right. Mhm.
And that's a very intensive process.
Yeah.
It's a very expensive process.
Mm.
And so they have a generative AI tool now to do that prior art search for you that speeds up the process tremendously, that
Oh,
makes it
wow.
much more cost efficient, for smaller innovators and inventors to try and do patent applications. I think another interesting example that I saw was the Federal Commerce Commission was looking at the ways that machine learning and generative AI could be used to detect patterns in stock market manipulations that
Oh, wow.
people couldn't catch.
Yeah.
So I think there's applications for it in terms of the level of things that you can analyze as well.
Mhm.
Good application.
Good applications, yeah, and like
Yeah.
those are really highly ethical applications as well
Right.
too,
Right.
which I don't think people always think about when they think about generative AI. They're thinking about the unethical things,
Right.
but the fact
Yeah.
that it could make us all a little more honest about things, I think, is really cool.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and just disclosing whether you've used it or not.
Yeah.
I think that can make us all honest about it.
Yes.
Can you explain how any issues with AI, like hallucinations or other things, are addressed in the policy, or if they're addressed at all? How they shape like any of the guidelines, or
Yeah, and so that's kind of an in tandem thing as well. We have a workshop that we're developing that's going to go over some of that a little bit more specifically, but within the policy itself, we have it very, explicitly stated that a student can use AI, and that's fine. Once they get to it, though, they are ultimately the ones who are responsible for the validity of whatever's contained therein. And so
Right.
that is a very common practice, professionally as well. Like I said, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, that's also one of their things. You can submit an AI-generated patent form, but as, someone who is accredited by the bar, you're signing off on it.
right.
And so the same thing for our policy too, is that you can use these AI tools, as you see fit within the creative process of trying to generate your grant proposal or, your submission. But you ultimately have to assert the validity of what it is based off your knowledge and your expertise as well.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Something else in that too, and I should have said it a little bit earlier, but Jessica and I were talking about this, but every discipline has, I believe, their own kind of language that they
Yeah.
use when
Right.
they're creating something. And so sometimes are things that are peer reviewed by faculty or grad students, they can pick up on that language.
Yeah.
and
Right.
know
Yeah.
What's being used and not
and what
used.
may not be.
And verifying that it's level appropriate for the audience that you're trying to speak to as well. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So in that case, each college knows their particular field so well that
The faculty,
yeah.
they have
Yeah.
a pretty good grasp at
Right.
excellent grasp on
Absolutely.
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
So then it can't, they're looking for those indicators.
Yes.
Like, yeah,
Absolutely.
got it. How would you say that your office educates students and faculty about AI or any limitations that it has?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, we are doing a workshop that talks about exactly those things, particularly, the limitations, but then also the ways that you could integrate it into, a research project or a proposal as well. So we're working on that, and then I think having the policy is a significant step as well. We
Yep, I think so.
talked to a couple other departments and divisions that are working on theirs, refining theirs, but also with the understanding that this is a living thing as well. This is going to continue to develop.
Right.
And then we have some other outreach things going on. I know we're presenting at a conference coming up very soon about our work as well, just to understand what other educational institutions are doing and then share our ideas and best practices with them.
And then with this first use of it on this
Yes.
application
Yeah.
process that's open now, it's the first time we've had the questions out there.
Yeah.
Right. So you get a lot of feedback from that, I'm
Yes.
sure.
Yeah. And our fall application cycle is really big usually. So I think it'll be really interesting to see the results as well.
That's awesome. So the policy promotes the concept of augmented intelligence, like with pairing AI tools with human expertise. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so augmented intelligence comes actually from the American Medical Association, is where it's derived from. And so that's their understanding of AI as an opportunity to promote and enhance skill sets that we already innately have as humans. One thing that I like to keep in mind, that I like to remind people as well, a significant portion of the training data for ChatGPT and all of its derivatives is Wikipedia. And if you think about what Wikipedia is in terms of the level of depth that it provides, it's a very general, it's an encyclopedia, it's a general source. And so just reminding students that research gives them the opportunity to be an expert in something, to go really deep into a topic and understand and cultivate a knowledge for it that is, so field specific that like they might be one of only 4 or 5 people in the world who are at that level on that topic. And so understanding then that like ChatGPT cannot reflect that.
No.
You can.
Yes.
But ChatGPT will not. And encouraging that and promoting that and saying there's ways that you can use ChatGPT as a springboard for you to really then go on and elaborate the things that you know and you understand. But that has to come from you. And it should. Like you should be confident in what you're doing.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that would, having students pair their own expertise with AI, I think will kind of give them maybe some confidence in that they do know what they're talking about. Because AI doesn't know everything. So I think that's a good combination. So how do you see this idea of augmented intelligence maybe evolving as more advanced AI tools come out? I know there's always new tools besides ChatGPT and different things like that.
That's something that's why Jessica was saying it's going to be a living document. It's going to be changing and adapting as we go along. So.
One of the important things I think too that we recognize with that process as well is that when we had our discussion, the Dean of Undergraduate Studies has an AI task force committee. His recommendation to us was that we put the last updated data on the page just to mark that.
That's a good idea.
This is the last time that we reviewed and refined it as well to understand, what else is out there, what else we have to integrate into our understanding, if there's any other resources, and just being very aware that this is a developing thing. I don't totally know the direction that it's all going to develop in yet. I don't think anyone does.
Maybe AI does.
Maybe AI does. But just to be cognizant of that, I think there's an opportunity for it to become more commonplace in terms of productivity tasks, but certainly, if we're thinking about it again at the level of being a good guide to general information, it's like there's an extent, I think, that it reaches relevance.
I agree. It looks like we have a question.
Okay.
Okay, so from Aubrey Jacques, she said, you mentioned earlier that you have your students disclose when they're using AI to assist them in completing their assignments. I wanted to know if you have plans to create AI-assisted assignments that help students develop AI skills that would be related to their career path.
So we don't really do anything with assignments in our office. And I guess that would probably be a question more geared towards the AI task force. But it is something that we do want students to know that they can use AI and help, like Jessica was saying too, with their careers and when they get out into the real world, knowing that it's there and that they're not afraid to use it, and B, more importantly, know how to use it appropriately.
To aid them. Yes.
And our policy is kind of just directed towards our programs to make sure that they are using it and citing it appropriately if they are using it. And not to discourage them from using it, but to make sure they're using it
appropriately.
I was gonna say, I think the closest thing that we have is within our training stuff right now is we have some examples of how they might want to integrate it into their research project or practices. So I have a couple, screenshots of me asking, Copilot to, explain a really dense theoretical term for me, or I have a screenshot of me asking Copilot if they could find me the most relevant sources on this topic so I can write a paper on it. But just to give them some sample ideas of what they might, the kinds of questions, the kinds of prompts that they'd want to submit to the AI as well to get, good feedback, good usable responses back from it as well. But yeah, in terms of assignments, we don't really have anything,
But it's good that you have examples so that they can see what can be, used and how it could be used. And how you were speaking of, you had screenshots of you using AI for like deep questions. I feel like, have you ever tried using it for, just saying, could you explain this topic to me as if I was like a 5-year-old or something? I've done that before.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever put 5-year-olds in there. No, I understand what you mean. No, I've definitely asked it though. There's some, heady philosophers that I have to read for some of my coursework as well. And so I've asked it before, can you explain, this particular concept as, define this one term from this person's article.
Right.
And work through it, through some of these really difficult multi-layered concepts as well. And it gives you a good general understanding where it's like, okay, if this is a paper where I have to understand part 1 to then be able to move into part 2, if I've, gotten the summary, I understand the concepts in part 1, now I can move into part 2.
Got it.
So I've done that before. I've done that work as well. Yeah.
Awesome.
You'd be like Clyde from
I could.
South Park,
Yes.
Yeah. Using it for
text everyone in my life with.
Yep.
I mean, I've used it, I think, when I'm creating an email
Yeah.
for somebody that I
So
need
have I.
to make sure I'm saying it.
It sounds right and
The
the tone's
tone,
good.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And I don't always use the language that it gives me
Right.
Yeah.
word for word,
Yes.
but it does give me some ideas of how I can reword mine.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course. Let's see. As AI continues to evolve, what measures are you taking to keep the policy up to date? I know you did
Yeah.
talk about
Yes.
that using the date
Mhm.
for whenever you update it and things like that. Are there any anticipated revisions coming up or?
Well, in our office, typically we are always about reviewing programs
Yes.
and
Okay.
making sure that everything is appropriate. And do we need to bring something up to date?
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
the policy will be a part of that, I'm sure. And especially after we get through this first
Round of the
round
feedback.
of applications that actually have the questions on the application, we'll have a better understanding of where we need to go, what we need to tweak, what we need to update or fix.
Mhm.
Probably, I would, like Jessica said, it's a living thing
Yes.
that's going to require
Some tending to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
on a regular basis. Yes.
Awesome.
And then also referring to what the Dean of Undergraduate Studies has laid out as well for AI, is if that changes, to reflect that,
Right.
to make sure
Yes.
that, their best practices are in alignment with our best practices as well,
Right.
which we've been, mostly on the same page. It's helpful that we are,
Mhm.
part of the same unit as well. So
Got it. And do you think, in terms of the FAU policy coming out, whenever that happens,
One
that
day.
you would have to change things maybe regarding how that is set up or things like
We'll
that?
have to, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
we'll have to see. Yeah, we'll definitely link to, anything that the university puts out officially with regards to policy. That's also something that's coming out of, the Dean of Undergraduate Studies
Right.
office as
Task
well.
force.
And the AI task force. So people that we've already been in conversation with, that we've, shared ideas with, that we are, very attentive to, what's
Got
going
it.
on with their departments and their processes as well.
Got it. So keeping an ear to the
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So given the changing landscape of AI, how do you stay informed about AI developments that may affect your policy and research? That could be for either of you.
That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. Yeah, I read a lot of,
Yeah.
things. I
Mhm.
have a great interest in looking at what different professional, national level, federal level organizations have as their policies and trying to understand for different disciplines what's going on. That's how I know about the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. That's how I know about everything going on in the world of, federal commerce.
And the task force.
And the
probably
task force
is
as well.
helpful as
Yeah,
well.
they have
Yeah.
a number of trainings, a number of resources that are linked. We have, the
Awesome.
ability to access a couple different online self-paced classes as well with regards to using AI in your classroom, integrating
Got
it,
it.
how to do prompt engineering, everything like that.
So have either of you used any of those courses or?
Yeah.
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 Okay. Did you find them helpful or was it something you already knew?
I did actually, yeah. Some of the coolest ideas that came out of it were actually from a professor who's at Palm Beach State College, and so she's talking about this at a national level. But some ideas too, just about ways that students can look at outputs from AI, and maybe they can find using their critical analysis skills areas where it's weak or they have more questions, and maybe that question is significant enough on its own to be like a research question that they could do a whole project on it.
Awesome.
On AI.
On it.
Oh,
Yes.
That's great. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to share about your office or anything like that? Anything coming up? I know you mentioned the symposiums that you have
In the spring.
in the
And
spring.
we don't host them, but we do have symposiums in the fall as
Yes,
well.
the fall.
Our campus has one coming up,
Mhm.
and then College of Science
Yeah.
has a symposium as well. And
Awesome.
just to reiterate again, the policy that we were talking about here is
It's for our
is
office.
just for our office.
Yes.
So
course.
we don't have courses in there. It's in our applications and our program.
Mhm. So, all right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, thank you both so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
For having us.
Of course.